Good evening. This is a BBC News special report. I am Julia Duffy. It has been almost 1 month and counting since the Babylon virus, which was believed to be started in Los Angeles, California, has devastated the mainland United States in what many call the most lethal apocalypse to hit a major country since World War II. The death toll in the United States is at a reported 77 million with scores more infected. The government of the United States has attempted to evacuate millions of residents to designated safe zones, but have run into major resistance from infected citizens. The U.S. military has begun what it calls Operation Twilight, which is a shadow military plan for dealing with the resistance by the infected U.S. citizens. The new President of the United States, who up until a few weeks ago was the United States' Secretary of the Interior, has told BBC News that this measure was necessary and that the moving of citizens to safe zones is the government's first priority. The United States government as well as their Centers for Disease Control have been at a complete loss to explain this event or to properly identify just exactly what the Babylon virus is. The BBC News has started its own investigation on this matter to see what information, if any, we could learn. Apparently, one of the Centers for Disease Control's top microbiologists, Dr. David Richards, was fired from the center days before the event in Los Angeles triggered the Babylon virus's path of destruction. He claims that he has information that is crucial to this situation. He joins us now by telephone from an undisclosed location. Good evening, Doctor.
Good evening.
We understand that you have a statement and a testimony that you would like to read before we begin. Is that correct?
Yes, Julia. The proper channels in this matter had no interest in my thoughts, so I decided to share them in other ways. I was chief of microbiology at the site in Morgantown, West Virginia. Over the last month, the United States has been hit with a lethal biological killer that has killed tens of millions of people. What I wanted to share with the world this evening is that the situation is not what it seems. Babylon did not just come out of the fog and begin a ruthless assault. We were tipped off to its arrival by the destruction of lower animals in a preserve in the Black Forest in Russia. I also want to make sure that citizens as well as professionals working on this killer are well aware that Babylon is not a virus at all. No medicine or antibiotics are going to stop it, and no cure is possible once infection occurs. Babylon is what we call a prion disease. The killer in this case is a defective protein chain. All of our bodies use protein chains in one way or another, and that is why the victims of this disease do not exhibit a fever or sweating. The body does not recognize the bad protein as an invader, so it does not make antibodies or give the typical signs of a classic infection. Apparently, the victims' bodies go into a coma of some sort, and when they reawake, they are maniacal to say the least. The other major problem is that now that we know that this is a prion, A, how did it come from Russia to the US, and B, where did it go to infect so many people? I also think that it is time for the government to stop covering up its little program and tell the people exactly what is going on. Since the start of this disaster, the United States government has covered up many things about this event. The first thing is that they have not been open about the symptoms that this disease shows in the victims. The version of this transmissible spongiform encephalopathy is the most devastating I have ever seen. This version kills the victim in a matter of days, not weeks or months. It is similar in a lot of ways to Creutzfeldt-Jakob's disease, also known as CJD, in which the victim will display rapidly progressive dementia, leading to memory loss, personality changes, hallucinations, and then coma. There is also a report that the victims of this disorder are having heavy bone loss occurring as well. This is accompanied by physical problems such as speech impairment, jerky movements, balance and coordination dysfunction, changes in gait, rigid posture, seizures, and the mentioned bone loss. The duration of the disease varies greatly, but sporadic or non-inherited CJD can be fatal within months or even weeks. However, the Babylon virus is fatal within days. The symptoms of the Babylon virus are caused by the progressive death of the brain's nerve cells, which is associated with the buildup of abnormal proteins forming amyloids in the brain. When the brain tissue from a Babylon patient is examined under a microscope, many tiny holes can be seen where whole areas of nerve cells have died. The word spongiform in transmissible spongiform encephalopathy refers to the sponge-like appearance of the brain tissue. I feel that it is crucial that citizens and scientists have this information. The defective protein can be transmitted by contaminated harvested human brain products, immunoglobulins, corneal grafts, dural grafts, or electrode implants. Secondly, it is important for us to figure out how infection started. The report of the technician in Los Angeles being infected was a cover by the United States government. Yes, the technician got infected with Babylon on the same day that it started, but the other people were infected as well, and not by the same means. There is an outside agent at work here. This disease is contagious, but is not as infectious as first believed. Ingestion of the protein in one form or another is the most common way to be infected, either by swallowing or inhaling it. I know that I was sent to Russia to investigate a village that was getting sick from the same symptoms as Babylon, and then less than a week later, all of the people in that village were dead. Their animals were dead too. Everything was dead. I went to investigate the case further less than 3 days later, and the case file was gone, and the system listed the case as classified. So there is something going on that the United States government needs to explain. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Richards. Now, I would like to ask you, is there an investigation being done to find out how this disease got into the mainstream population?
Not by me, there isn't, Julia, but I do know that there needs to be a lot looked into as to how this infection was sent to the United States.
Dr. Richards, there are many here that believe that there is a connection between the outbreak in the United States and the closing of the processing plant in Sheffield earlier in the year. Do you feel that there is a connection as well?
Yes, certainly. Most often the way that a prion is spread is through processing of some sort, as we saw with the mad cow epidemic that hit some years ago. If the prion got into a processing plant of some sort or was processed in some synthetic manner, then there is no telling how many people have been exposed to it.
Dr. Richards, what can you tell us about the U.S. military's Operation Twilight?
I can tell you that it is a risky measure at best, and at worst is just troops shooting citizens that are infected and violent. Not a real good situation in either direction, I must say.
Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Richards, and please keep us up to date with any new developments.
You bet. Thank you, Julia, and I will let you know as soon as I hear something.
This is Julia Duffy from the BBC with the top stories of the hour.
We interrupt the following for an administrative message. This is an administrative message. All broadcast and cable systems will transmit this message. The following message is being transmitted by order of the United States government. The United States military will be concluding with Operation Twilight nationwide as of 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All citizens are advised to remain indoors to prevent infection. If you have suffered any injuries as a result of Operation Twilight, you may go to a designated military facility for treatment. All military personnel will be making announcements as to the locations of your nearest medical units. Please be advised that martial law is still in effect in the entire mainland United States. All citizens are advised not to leave their homes unless directed by the civil authorities. The United States government will resume relocation efforts to the assigned military areas as of 9 a.m. Wednesday. All citizens will be mandated to go to these sites unless infected. This has been an administrative message. You are listening to the emergency alert system. All broadcast and cable systems shall transmit this message. This is WBZ. We will continue to serve the Metro Boston area.
Attention please. Your attention please. This is the Ontario Public Warning System. Local and government officials have authorized this bulletin for public broadcast on all channels. Please stand by.
This is a public emergency. Public health officials have reported that a large number of citizens infected with an unknown disease have been taken to the Morrison Walking Clinic in Niagara Falls. Many more began appearing in hospitals near Grimsby, St. Catharines, Burlington, and Hamilton. As many as 62 deaths have occurred at this time. It is very possible that this is the same disease that is spreading through the United States at this time. Border officials have also reported that many people are trying to get into Ontario by way of Buffalo. Government officials are asking all citizens to return to their homes and lock all doors and windows and to turn off all heat and air conditioning. Officials are taking every precaution to prevent the spread of this disease. We have just received reports that several provinces such as Quebec, Manitoba, and even British Columbia are reporting high numbers of infected citizens turning up at local health clinics and hospitals. Please stay tuned to this channel for all the latest news and information. This is a public emergency message from the Government of Ontario.
晚上好，欢迎到国语日报。今晚我们有更新的巴比伦病毒已在美国的很多人死亡，并已在世界各地蔓延。此时，在美国的死亡人数是7700万。有报道说该病毒已蔓延至加拿大，该国并不存在报告感染的几个省份。我们刚刚获悉这种病毒已经开始以及攻击中国。报告给我们来自天津、杭州、广州、香港和汕头。我们必须采取一切防范措施，以防止全面大流行。政府将成立疫苗中心各地命名的城市。我们呼吁市民要获取这些疫苗预防感染。这不是一个测试，这是真正的紧急情况，而这消息是信息。请详细信息稍后。
We interrupt this broadcast for an emergency action notification. This is a national emergency. All broadcast and cable systems shall transmit this message. The following message is being transmitted at the request of the United States government and the governor of the state of New Mexico. At approximately 2:34 p.m. Pacific time, a distress signal was sent out of the Dulce base facility reporting that it had been overrun by infected citizens. Reports stated that the entire base was contaminated, and all of its occupants infected. At approximately 2:40 p.m. Pacific time, the distress signal stopped, and a massive nuclear detonation occurred in Dulce, New Mexico. There is massive damage over a 15-mile area and a cloud of fallout is beginning to spread into southern Colorado. All citizens are to be advised of the radiological hazard and remain indoors until the fallout clears. Fallout can kill. Please remain indoors as this will reduce your risk of being exposed to fallout. Please stay tuned for more information.
Good evening. Once again this is Julia Duffy reporting with the BBC Nightly News. It has been 7 months since the first reports of the Babylon virus have come out of the United States, and 4 more countries have been added to the list of those whose citizens have been infected with this lethal disease. They are Norway, Belgium, Laos, and Labrador. By our estimates, Babylon's death toll is approaching 230 million, with countless infected and not knowing they are infected. Since the last time that we had contact with Dr. David Richards, we have been only able to isolate this disease as a prion, but its source has yet to be determined. The BBC will continue to investigate, as well as health officials, to find out what is setting this disease in motion. Tonight we are interviewing Colonel Doug Masters from the United States Army, who has some idea of how progress of this crisis is going.
Good to be here, Julia.
Colonel, has there been any stop to the infection spreading across the United States?
We have been unable to determine at this time how exactly the virus got into the mainstream, but we are making every effort to find out.
How many citizens of the U.S. would you say are evacuated at the present moment?
Not enough, Julia. We could be doing a lot better with that.
Let's hope so for the future. We thought that, we have just learned from our producer that someone on the phone wishes to talk with you, Colonel.
Oh? I wonder.
Cheryl, put them through.
We are sorry. The number you dialed is permanently disconnected. You are now being connected to the watch.
Hello, Colonel Masters.
To whom am I speaking?
An old friend. Let's just leave it at that.
I have lots of friends.
And a lot more enemies. My name is Monk, and I am a commander of the separatist group The Watch. Does that name mean anything to you, Colonel?
It can't be.
Yes, it is. You see, Colonel, it's one thing to be on the ball, and it's something totally different to be 2 steps ahead of it. For some of our listeners or viewers out there that might not remember our group, Worcester, Massachusetts, we took over an abandoned police station in the downtown area that resulted in the loss of over 25,000 people, thanks to the insubordination of the Colonel not listening to the caveats that the Watch gave to the public.
You set off a nuclear device in a major metropolitan city. Are you crazy?
I distinctly remember telling everyone to keep back 500 yards. Everyone did except your squad, Colonel.
What squad are you talking about, Monk?
Why, the CGB squad, of course, a branch of the U.S. government that is practically untouchable. Men that do not answer to anyone, not even the president. Apparently there was something that they wanted to do. The only thing is that they could not risk having the Watch in the way. They breached the building calling our bluff because they did not think that we were really armed and stole the warhead from where we said we did. But drawing you out was part of the plan, Colonel. All part of the plan.
Julia, do yourself and the world a favor and hang up on this lunatic.
I wouldn't do that, Julia. You want to get the full story, and I have it.
You have nothing. Please hang up, sir.
I will not, and if you hang up, I will take over your station.
We are staying here, Monk. My producer says that you're
I will
on.
not sit here and listen to this.
Go then, Colonel.
I will not be set up and slandered here by a fascist communist backyard militia wannabe.
Okay then, let's just accommodate that statement and tell us what Project Bountiful is, Colonel.
Colonel? Colonel Masters has just left the studio. Monk, are you still there?
Yes, I am here, Julia.
Good, let's get back to the conversation. What is Project Bountiful and what can you tell us about it?
Project Bountiful was a covert project that was put together by the United States, Russia, China, and Japan. It was for all intents and purposes a planned Armageddon. People do not think that these things are a possibility. Many believe that when you talk about it, you've seen one too many sci-fi shows. This one was real, and its name was Babylon. Dr. Richards was right when he said that this thing was started in the lower animals, and that they knew more than they were telling us. The U.S. was in collaboration with other countries about this disease once it was discovered in Russia. The U.S. and Russia worked on this ceaselessly as they felt that there was a real potential for a plague to be started with this bug. They were right too. The only problem is that the US and Russia also developed a vaccine for the plague along with the Japanese, but the vaccine that they were distributing to the Chinese and the Japanese was a fraud. It's nothing more than food coloring and water. Then they could not agree on a timetable. Finally, it was decided that it would happen on a holiday when people were away from their homes. It would be carried in bottled water and transmitted also, as we found out, by any of the carrier bugs such as mosquitoes and fleas.
Are you saying that the Chinese and Japanese have been given fake vaccines by the US and Russia?
That is exactly correct, Julia. The reason being is that those two countries need population control for after the apocalypse. They have killed a lot of resources and they have let their populations get out of control. The gist of Project Bountiful is for countries like the United States and Russia to build up third world countries to be on par with the United States and Russia. The way that they hoped to do that was by lacing the drinking water of those countries with HGH.
HGH?
It stands for human growth hormone. The U.S. would use growth hormones from the pituitary glands of subjects to make HGH, then treat the water. What I believed happened here is this. Richard said that he saw the village in Russia with the dead sheep. Those sheep must have been eaten by the villagers, sheep that were infected with this prion disease, or otherwise known as scrapie. From there, the villagers got sick, their pituitaries were taken for making this HGH, which was then put into the water to infect others. The sheep were then sent for processing in Sheffield, England, and their pituitaries were sent to a lab in Los Angeles, California, I believe. So how did so many people get so sick, you're wondering? Well, the Japanese told me that. Since the U.S. stiffed them on the vaccine, they told me that they did it, and how they did it. They were putting the infected HGH into bottled water. After all, humans drink water more out of the bottle nowadays than they do from the tap. And even better, bottled water isn't even approved by the Food and Drug Administration. Most of these companies don't even filter it, let alone look for prions. So, just something to think about with your next bottle of water.
Dear God, then that would mean millions of bottles were contaminated and have the potential to infect many more. Please tell me, Monk, that there is some good news to this?
Yes, there is. The Japanese and the Chinese are working with us to stop these plants and the production of their water. They are also distributing a new vaccine that is unlike anything ever before that is proven to work. But they aren't going to get to the United States after Japan and China are taken care of first.
I think that is the best news anyone has heard in months. Thank you, Monk, for the information, and we hope that you check back in with us soon. This is Julia Duffy at the BBC, London.
Interrupt all broadcasting to bring this special news message. The following message is being transmitted by order of the Centers for Disease Control, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, and the World Health Organization. A biological hazard warning has been issued worldwide after it has been discovered that the Babylon virus is being caused by a prion disease, and being primarily transmitted by contaminated bottled water. The World Health Organization, FEMA, and the Centers for Disease Control have ordered all citizens to not drink any bottled water at this time. These bottles must be disposed of properly, and the CDC is urging citizens not to pour the contaminated water down the drain or on the ground, as this will risk infecting public drinking water supplies. All citizens receiving this message are advised to turn over all bottled water products to the civil authorities for proper disposal. Civil authorities will be going to assigned areas for bottled water confiscation. More information will be given tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. This message will be retransmitted in 1 minute. You are listening to the emergency alert system. All broadcast and cable systems shall transmit this message. This station is serving the Metro Boston area.